Hey there, friends. Welcome back to the Regent Law Podcast. On today's episode, we hear from new Regent Law professor Christian Edmonds sharing a wonderful message from Mark 9 at a recent law chapel. We hope you enjoy.
I was just fine with him saying I'm a Baptist preacher. But when I went to undergrad at Oklahoma Baptist, and during my time, when I was 14, I accepted a call to ministry. I started doing pulpit supply in Baptist world. So if you're Baptist, we have these associations. And the associational director would send me to small churches within the southern part of Oklahoma. So every small church in Oklahoma I know of. And then when I was a senior in college, a little big church near my hometown, Jimtown Baptist Church, needed a preacher. And so I went and filled in, and it's like 50 people. And I remember Larry Hicks, our head deacon, said, "Well, you can be the preacher if you want, but we'll hire you right now." And so that's how I became the head pastor of that church. And I was there for a number of years, and then the Lord prompted me to go to law. And I'll tell you that in a separate inquiry, okay? In a separate time, that's too long a story. But I'm excited to be here. This is my first passion. I'll gladly admit that, is preaching God's word. So thank you all for coming. There's a lot of people here, okay? So I just want to talk to you today about how we can see God through the Commerce Clause. That's what we're talking about in con law later. Everyone better be ready for Gibbons, but we're going to talk about it heavily. No, that's not what I'm going to talk to you about today. Today, I want to talk with you about Mark chapter 9, okay? And you might say, ooh, the transfiguration. No, all right? Mark 9:24, I believe, help my unbelief. This appeal of a desperate father expresses in 5 simple words a profound, difficult, confusing, and common experience. All followers of Jesus have both believed and not believed at the same time. So has anyone been skydiving before? Wow, I'm one of few. Yeah, you probably didn't think I'd been skydiving. I've been skydiving. It's actually with a previous girlfriend before Laura. So she pulled me into it. And so we went, and it was in Oklahoma. And if you've been skydiving, for the 3 people that have done it, you have to do a lot of training before, okay? It's like a full day's event, and you have to do a lot of training, and they teach you a bunch of stuff, and you have to get certifications, and you have to sign like 75 waivers of your life. And, throughout this whole process, right, I'm feeling pretty good. I didn't really want to do it, but I'm trying to impress the girlfriend. And so, but I feel pretty good, right, going through all this. And I feel pretty confident. The instructor seems competent. He, was very informative and helpful. And so I'm feeling pretty good going into everything. If you've been skydiving, you know it all changes once you get on that airplane. Okay? You start, these things are tiny. Like you're not getting on a 747. Well, obviously you're not getting on that, but it's pretty rickety looking, and I think we got like a Groupon for it. So all this stuff starting to we really did get a Groupon for it. Like all this stuff coming into my head, like, oh my gosh, what did I do? And I'm getting on the plane, and then because it's my first time, I'm hooked to the guy, and we're attached together. And I will admit that my girlfriend went out first. I said, "You can go ahead, go." I don't like you that much yet. You go out and go. And so I'm hooked to the guy, and he's like, "Are you ready to go?" And I remember just in that moment saying, "No, I'm not." And he goes, "Well, we've got to, okay?" And he kind of joked, and he goes, "You don't get your money back." And so I said, "Okay," and we jumped. All right, and so my point from that story, and you're like, how does this align with faith, right? My point of the story is faith doesn't mean the absence of doubt, okay? But rather that we keep moving forward when we have doubt. I can tell you right now, when I was connected to Brian, who was my buddy, we were buddies, I had a lot of doubt. I did not know if he knew what he was doing. I did not know what he had done the night before. I was not trusting that parachute very well. I had a lot of doubt, but I still acted. Okay? There are a lot of people today well-meaning people, but they feel that healing and blessing are measured by how hard they believe something. Okay, if I can just believe, if I can have faith, and if I don't doubt, I'll receive certain things and certain requests will be answered. And that is not what the Bible teaches. Have you read it? Many of the giants of the faith struggled with belief. Many of them had great moments of questioning. It's not just Thomas that doubted. Adam, Eve, Abraham, Sarah, Moses, David, Elijah, John the Baptist, even Jesus' family thought he was crazy. And all the disciples ran away. They were all doubters. But that's okay. It's okay. We love to nitpick, right? Love to nitpick. It's okay. Why is that okay? Because Jesus doesn't ask us to pretend and to try to manufacture certainty in our lives. He accepts us where we are. He asks us to take faithful steps forward amidst the doubt, amidst the questioning. So today, I just want to read a little bit about this father, okay? This father of the demon-possessed child, because I think the story perfectly exemplifies the human disposition towards doubt, okay, and how we should operate when we don't feel the warm fuzzies, okay, of trust. How do we go forward? Okay, so let's just go through the passage really quickly, and then we'll dive into the details. So Jesus, right, if you know, it's transfiguration. He takes Peter, James, and John up the mountain. Okay, Jesus becomes dazzling white. We got an appearance by Elijah and Moses. And then God speaks, right? God says, "This is my dearly beloved son. Listen to him." Mountaintop experience. What do we all know from church camp? Mountaintop experiences don't last very long, because what do they come down to? Oh my gosh, they're coming down the mountain. They're probably just amazed. They're just, Peter, he's probably just talking like crazy coming down the mountain. And then they see what happens. The disciples are all huddled up. There's a big crowd around them. And they're arguing with the religious leaders. And you got to think Jesus is probably like, okay, here we go again. So, verse 15. When the crowd saw Jesus, he asked, "What's all the arguing about?" Okay, one of the men in the crowd spoke up and said, "Teacher, I brought my son so that you could heal him. He is possessed by an evil spirit that won't let him talk. And whenever this spirit seizes him, it throws him violently to the ground. Then he foams at the mouth and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. So I asked your disciples to cast out the spirit. Could they do it? No, they could not. So Jesus said to them, verse 19, strong rebuke, "You faithless people, how long must I be with you? How long must I put up with you? Bring the boy to me." Verse 20, so they brought the boy. But when the evil spirit saw Jesus, it threw the child into a violent convulsion. He fell to the ground, writhing and foaming at the mouth. "How long has this been happening?" Jesus asked the boy's father. He replied, "Since he was a little boy. The spirit often throws him into the fire or into waters, trying to kill him. Have mercy on us. Help us, if you can." Jesus replies, "If I can. Anything is possible for those who believe." The father instantly cried out, "I do believe, but help me overcome my unbelief." When Jesus saw that the crowd of onlookers were growing, he rebuked the evil spirit. "Listen, you spirit that makes this boy unable to hear and speak," he said, "I command you to come out of the child and never to enter him again." Then the spirit screamed and threw the boy into another violent convulsion and left, and the boy appeared dead. A murmur ran throughout the crowd as people said, "He's dead." Verse 27, but Jesus took him by the hand, helped him to his feet, and he stood up. There are a few observations that I want to take from this passage. I'll be honest, I feel a little guilt as a Baptist preacher. I'm going to do 4 points, not 3. Okay, I was trying to get it down to 4, but I said, this just doesn't make sense. Do 4, okay? And they're all about the Father. He struggled, he waited, he cried out for help, and then Jesus responded. Okay, he's struggling. We're going to talk about that in a minute. This man is going through one of the most torturous experiences a parent can ever go through. Now that I'm a parent, I can only imagine what this struggle is like. He was struggling. But in the midst of that struggle, he acted in obedience. He acted in obedience by waiting for Jesus. Okay, and then when he finally saw Jesus, he was honest, and he cried out for help. And then Jesus acted. Okay, so let's just talk about the struggle. Can you imagine what this experience had been like? Now, the passage doesn't give, it gives a lot of detail. I'm going to maybe take a few liberties with what might have been happening, but these parents, they had to have been doing everything to help their child, right? This was an affliction that wasn't just a physical abnormality. It was a spiritual issue, tormented by a demon. Okay, this child had been dealing with this since childhood. We don't know the age of the child, but if they're going to note childhood, this child must have been much older, at least in their teens. And it tormented the boy, causing him to go into seizures and prevented him from speaking. No doubt we see that the parents had not only had to provide for their child, but they also had to protect their child. They had to protect their child from various issues with fire and water where the spirit tried to kill the child. Okay, this is not a normal circumstance that parents normally deal with. This is an immensely emotional, tasking event. This is something that caused daily dread for these parents, that they might not be able to save their child the next time something happens, but it also caused future dread for them because they didn't know what was going to happen to the child once they were gone and weren't able to protect the child anymore. Okay, these are the things that he dealt with, but think about the emotional toll that this would have taken. Can you imagine the fatigue associated with day and night vigilance on a child that at a moment's notice could be taken from them? And let's be real, what about the emotional strain that the parents probably faced in their marriage? I can tell you, when we're dealing with struggles with our children, and they're minor struggles compared to something like this, it can cause a strain, right? Someone does something, says something. Usually it's associated with Charlie wanting a popsicle and I give it and he's not supposed to have a popsicle, right? There's something like that. It's like small, but it causes strife. It causes strife within the marriage, okay? So the fatigue, the marital strife, probably affected them financially, okay? Financially, they were struggling either by paying for services or by foregoing payment from a job to take care of the child. Okay, they struggle financially, and then sadly, lastly, in this culture, they probably struggled from shame. You see, at this time, many people thought when you had a child or someone that had some type of severe defect of this sort, you must have sinned in some way. Okay, so they walked with this child every day with eyes on them thinking, what must they have done? Beaten, tired, fatigued, emotionally at the end of their rope. But give the father credit, right? He sought help. I'm sure he had sought spiritual leaders, exorcists, people to help. And then he comes, he's hearing about Jesus. And he knows about the disciples. And he comes, and he wants help. And they do nothing. They can't do it. They can't do anything. I go through this detailed analysis of the background because I want to make the point that this father, his unbelief was rooted in his unique experience. Okay? Our unbelief is rooted in our unique experience. His fears and disappointments shaped his expectations. So do ours. He was helpless in deeply personal places, and he was losing the fight of faith. So are we, okay? As my son, Charlie, likes to say, that's a personal problem, Dad. We all have our own personal problems that we're dealing with. We all have unique circumstances and experiences that might cause us to feel helpless. My question for you today is, what are you experiencing that's causing this regret, shame, doubt in your life? Okay? And how are you supposed to respond when you feel that? This passage is going to tell us, okay? Amongst all the anguish, amid the storm, did the Father leave? Did he say, disciples can't help, we're leaving? Okay, how easy would it have been to just feel utter despair and just allow the apathy to set in. There's nothing I can do. Let's just go home. But what did he do? He waited for Jesus. Okay, he waited for Jesus. Yes, he was weak. Yes, he was trembling. He doubted. He was as feeble as could be, but the Father acted in obedience by waiting for the Lord. I'll tell you a quick story. So I like golf. Hopefully some people in my common law class were going to go golfing soon. We were going to go over fall break, but that didn't work out. I like golf, and I'm not a great golfer, but I work hard at it. My wife says, you're really a hard worker at golf, which is probably not a great utilization of my time. But so I do enjoy it, and I remember when I first learned, it was years ago, but I was an adult when I learned, which is a bad decision. And I would go to the golf range, and hit buckets of balls all the time. And I remember I go so often, I got to know it was close to our house, and I got to know the guy that kind of ran the clubhouse. And I remember one day I was getting kind of a large bucket of balls, and he's like, why don't you go play? He's like, quit hitting balls. And I remember what kind of took me back, he's kind of confrontational, right? What the heck? And I was like, no, I'm not ready to go play. I'm not ready. I've got my path is wrong. My face is closed. You see my slice. I'm got too big of a divot. My hands are all off. I got all of this stuff to work on. I don't have time to go play yet. And he's like, okay, whatever, guy. You didn't need, you want to get on the couch? Are you going to be okay? And so I go and hit my balls. And I think of that story often with my faith journey, because if you want to go play, you think a lot of times for young, insecure golfers that everything has to be perfect and everything has to be in line in order for me to go play golf. That's not how you get better, right? It's the same thing here. Often we think that if we're to be obedient, if we're to take that step forward in our faith, everything's got to be right. I'm doubting right now. I don't feel the peace of God right now. I don't feel as though I'm walking closely with God. I got to wait. I got to stay at the range. No, you don't. This guy's going through hell and back again. He's struggling. He's at the end of his rope, but he waited for Jesus. The step of obedience in the Father was to wait for Jesus. What's the step in obedience he's asking from you today? Maybe it's quit worrying about law school, right? For others, it might be to let go of that sin. And some of you might be that you need to wait. And you need to be patient in responding for God's response in your life. Life doesn't have to be perfect in order to follow Jesus. Doubt is inevitable, but it shouldn't be paralyzing. Okay? So he was struggling. He waited on the Lord. He was obedient to the Lord. And thirdly, when he saw Jesus, he cried out for help. Okay, let's just read this again. So when Jesus arrives, the Father comes up to him, falls on his knees and shouts, "Teacher, I brought you my son with a possessed spirit. I told your disciples to cast it out, and they couldn't do it." And then he says this, right? Big point. "But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us." Now, if you ever hear sermons on this, boy, everyone wants to harp on that. Questioning God's power. I don't want to focus on that. This dude's going through it. I'm not going to nitpick his doubt. That's a cheap shot. Okay? I want to focus on what he says at the end. Take pity on us and help us. It's a very interesting word. I'm not, you notice I said I attended seminary. I did not graduate. Okay? So I know enough to be dangerous. I took enough Greek to throw out a word. I know our Greek professor was like, please don't do that, because you always get it wrong. And then I'm going to do it, okay? Sorry, Alan Bandy. So, Betheo, that's the word there. It's not used much in the New Testament, okay? It means to run to aid someone who needs help, to to help someone who's in distress, to run towards them. And so you have to understand that when he is crying out for help, this is not, could you help us out? We gotta get our tire changed. Could you help us out? No, this is an individual who is in utter desperation and is hanging on by his fingertips, and he's reached the end of his rope, and he blurts out, "Help us! I don't have anywhere else to go. Please, help me." And when you're clinging to dear life, who do you cry out to for help? Okay? I can tell you in my own life, many times I do not cry out to Jesus. Many times in my own life, I rely on myself. I rely on my wife. I rely on some practical tool or experience to get me through it. I've talked to my classes about this. Why do we not predispose our heart to have an initial reaction of, "Jesus, help me"? Why is it always that we're conditioned to use him as a last resort? Okay? The father, he cried out for help. He cried out to the right person for help. And my question for you is, who do you cry out to for help? Okay, so then Jesus responds in verse 23. And what does he say, right? You can take this a lot of ways. He says, "If I can." Now, this is where I'd like to have some video evidence of what's going on. I think the Pharisee in me wants to be like, where's the inflection? Okay, if I can help, how dare you think I can't help? And he's got some righteous indignation. And I'm sure many of us would say, how could you question Jesus Christ would not be able to help? Okay, be quiet. Just sit down. Shh. Okay, no. I fully believe that there was a twinkle in Jesus' eye when he saw this desperation. And he said, if I can. Sir, you're in the right place. Anything is possible for those who believe. If I can, of course I can, and I gladly will. Okay? Jesus is essentially, in my opinion, asking the Father, come on, you know I can do this. Okay, you know I can do this. What does the Father say? This is key. What does the Father say? Does he respond, "Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, you can. Absolutely. Yes, you can." Does he put on a fake face? Does he lie? Does he put on the happy face and smile at everyone at church on Sunday like there's no problem? "Oh, yeah, you're absolutely right. You can do it." No! He's honest. And immediately, in verse 24, the boy's father exclaimed, "I do believe, but help me overcome my unbelief." He uses the same verb, batheo, again. Run to my unbelief. Run to my unbelief. Run to my aid. Help me, because I'm doubting. The father believed, but he had doubts. He trusted, but not fully. He knew Jesus could help, but he probably didn't feel it. And he told Jesus exactly that. I'm struggling, and I need you to help me. And how do you think Jesus responded to this? Oh, you got to believe. No. Jesus probably said, finally, someone who's real. They aren't putting on the happy face. They aren't lying about how wonderful things are. This guy opened up and said, yeah, I'm struggling and I need your help. Is that not wonderful? This serves as a reminder that there isn't one of us who doesn't experience both belief and unbelief. It's not a contradiction. It's an explanation of our spiritual journey. Okay? The Lord never expects perfect faith. Do you know why? Because we can't give it because we're sinful. All right? He's never going to get it out of us. And there's always going to be a measure of doubt mixed in with the belief at some point in our lives. May we be like the Father. When we're struggling, don't run away. Wait on the Lord. Ask for his help. Tell him you're struggling. Be vulnerable with him. Cry out to him earnestly. And what will he do? He'll respond. Let's look at the last point. Okay, let's finish up with the good news. Jesus acted. Okay? Then Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit. Matthew says it came out of him at once. The spirit shrieked, convulsed him violently, and it came out. In other words, having done its worst, it left him as though he was dead. And some of the people said, what a shame. He's died. But verse 27, but Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him to his feet, and he stood up. He stood up. Friends, this is what Jesus does. He takes people whose lives are decimated, in whose lives the image of God is distorted and en route to destruction, and he does what only he can do and what no one else can, and that is he enters into that life. He takes that person by the hand, he lifts them up, and they stand up. If you're struggling today, that's what he can do for you. Wait on him. Be real with him. Ask him for help. He will answer. He will extend his righteous, all-powerful, peace-giving hand, and you will stand up. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for your word. I pray that you will let us hear it and let us comprehend it and let us apply it. Apply it to our lives, Lord. Thank you so much for your provision. Thank you so much for your grace. Thank you for your grace that you've given each and every one of us today, that we can even be here. Lord, let us rely on you. Let us admit the struggle. Let us look to you first and have confidence that you'll stand us up. You're great and mighty God. Let's enjoy the rest of this week and be filled with joy as we go about our days. In your name I pray. Amen.